friends, welcome back. In this second video of the Mayesh Design Star series, we will be focusing on three concepts: architecture, color theory, and versatility. Before we get started, I'm going to define these terms individually so that we're all on the same page. The first term is color theory. We draw a lot of things from Putman's book, Color Theory. He introduces 7 different color schemes, and the ones that Floral really does is monochromatic, analogous, and accent color. Those are the 3 different types of bouquet that I'll be creating today. The second concept we'll be discussing is architecture. This talks about the border or the shape of the bouquet. We'll be discussing symmetry, grouping, and gestural stems. The third and final concept we'll be discussing is versatility. This is the ability to use different elements within the same bouquet. High-end flowers, standard flowers, preserved flowers, tropical flowers, and then seasonal flowers, which we made our own category. I'm going to be implementing these elements into the 3 bouquets I'll be making today and sharing techniques that I use using even odd numbers for different elements. In our last video, we talked about guiding customers through a form to discover their style and preference from a limited product selection. Because our motto is unique flowers for unique people, no bouquet leaves the studio being replicated. We use the form to create a recipe, but instead of using flowers for the recipe, we use color theory, versatility, and architecture. The customer selects the colors they want in their bouquet, and then they select the architecture or aesthetic, whether it's romantic, whimsical, modern, or abstract, that helps guide our recipe. The versatility portion is up to the designer. The customer on the fork can select a tropical, preserved flower or seasonal flower as an add-on, and we as the designer can decide whether or not to opt into those options. We then take this recipe and we go to our sales floor and we aligned the floral pieces to the recipe that we created: color theory, versatility, and architecture. The versatility part is up to the designer. The customer can select to have a tropical edition, preserved flower edition, or a seasonal favorite, and we can see if that supports the architecture and color theory that they already selected. Then we take this recipe or this paper and we go to our sales floor and select the flowers that best complement this recipe. For the sake of this video, I am using Putman's color swatches. In their book, Color Theory, they actually have color swatches that you can rip out, which is what I did to create 3 different looks that we're creating today. So just as a visual representation, these are the colors that we'll be focusing on in each bouquet. Before we get started, there are 2 important factors that I want to share. The first is the importance of Mayesh standing order and flower selection. You want to make sure that the flowers you're having week in and week out support your floral designs and what you want leaving the store. So ask yourself, what kind of bouquets do I want leaving my store? And the second tip is very similar to the tip I gave for finding your logo. It's an exercise that can help you discover your niche and style quicker. I wish that I had this exercise before I opened up Fleur, because that would save me a lot of time and money and experience, and I would have used this exercise to better discover my style. So I'm going to share this on the Mayesh blog for the sake of time. For our first bouquet, the color theory we will focus on is monochromatic. We'll be making an all-white bouquet with tropical and preserved flower additions. We're going to get started with our greenery first. For the sake of time, we already cleaned all of the petals and everything off of the stems, so it's all clean. So we're gonna get started with the greenery, and what I like to teach is you want to create a chicken wire effect within your greenery first. That is the most important concept because that is where you'll be sticking in the rest of the flowers, similar to a vase arrangement. In this portion, it's also very important that you also create your shape, so the architecture of your bouquet. So I'm going to do an asymmetrical bouquet because I have the Phalia orchid, which is going to be on this side most likely. So I want to have a higher greenery option here, and you want to, of course, face the flowers towards yourself. As you're building the bouquet, the flowers will keep moving, so you just want to adjust that in between. So up next, what I usually do is I use standard flowers. We have carnation, mums, and stock, which I start with first because those are not my focal flowers and it covers more of the base. So using that chicken wire effect, you want to kind of slide in between those branches and you want to do the first one pretty low So then it's in the middle, but still low enough that you can still do higher end flowers on the top. Then you want to clip your finger in the back. Still adjusting the shape. It didn't really move, so that's good for me. And the next one, I usually do aligned with that greenery on this side so that it just lightly aligns. And then the third one, I usually do on the other side. So I use groups of 3 to create the base structure of my bouquet. Once the mums are set, and you don't have to do all of them at the same time, I just like to do it because it's easier. I then am gonna do my carnations, which I forgot to open, but you can open them up to make them more poofy. You wanna slide these in between all the other gaps that you see, because again, we wanna cover this area so then you can have the flowers, the main flowers popping out. So we do that, and then there's some negative space here. So I'll place one here. And then the third one, and again, I work in 3s and I try to create that triangle or asymmetric effect. So I'm still matching the same architecture that I built from the beginning. And again, adjusting the flowers because they keep twisting as you make. And you can also kind of pull things forward. Because if the greenery is too short, the flowers are going to overpower them. So you still want to keep moving it up so it's still showcased, unless in your bouquet you don't want the greenery showcased. So that would be a different style. I like to do it like this. You turn it upside down and then kind of push it forward because gravity helps you that way. But I don't want it that tall. So I still have that asymmetrical look. At this time, before I get into my snapdragon, I'm actually going to play with my phalia. Because the thing with phalias that we all florists know is they usually have one focal side. If I do it this way, you can't see the phalia. If I do it this way, you can. Which means that the phalia will probably be on the right side of the bouquet because then it's more showcased. And you could do the second one if you wanted to. We're just gonna pause that for a second because I don't think I want to do 2 just yet. After that, I'm going to add my snapdragon. I was gonna say stock, which is the same. And I'm gonna fit in that negative space, but I still want to create that asymmetrical look, so I'm gonna use it to match the greenery that I built here. And then I always like to group as well, so I always do groups of 2 because it just makes it look more full. And since I already did one here, I'm gonna match that one here. It kind of looks like this. Again, I put the phalia early because I wanted to see where it's going for that effect. Next step, I'm going to do my standard roses. So again, I'm using all of my standard flowers first because my garden roses, my ranunculus, my anemones are going to be the focal and I want them to pop out, which is why we're building the base like this. With the roses, I like to do 4 standard and 4 garden roses. I start with the standards first, and you just want to slide them in between, again, to cover any negative spaces. And your hand might get tired at this point, but it's okay. I always try to make sure that none of the flowers are the same level. So I can pause here and kind of play with the length, pushing flowers in. And then also cleaning up flowers. And I just, again, follow that same shape. To create that asymmetrical look. And now with our garden roses, I like to grab taller stems of garden roses because I want them to pop out like this above the standards and the mums and the carnations. So I'll probably just do now, I'll probably just do 2 for now. This is why the base is very important, because all these flowers are going into that chicken wire that we created, and it makes it a little bit easier to hold. Now I'm going to pause on the garden roses, and I want to add in some anemones and ranunculus. What I like to do with these is group. So I usually have sets of 3 for grouping. This one has 4, so we're going to take one out. And what I do is I kind of create a step so they are at different levels, and then I place them together in an area, or you could do them individually, because if your hand is tired at this point, which mine is right now, you can place it down and you can group them individually like this, focusing on the gestural stems, so seeing which way they bend and placing them that way. So if they bend too much, you might want to put it in between a flower, so that way it holds its shape. Wow, I just sang. And that way they're still grouped, but they're in different heights. And you want to do the same thing with the anemones. Again, make sure that they're popping out of the bouquet. Don't put them too low, as they will be hidden. It's easier to do it individually because they're so fragile. So, kind of have this grouping, which also adds to your architecture. Adds that grouping. Anemones. All right, so we have that. Since we have this negative space here, I'm going to add these 2 amaryllis, or maybe 1, just so I cover that negative space to create that asymmetrical look. If you want to add another one, you can. Again, placing them just side by side, like that. And if you wanted to add a preserved or another, I'm just going to show you. Looking at the phalia and how it faces, I would probably add it in between here like this. And then if I were to add any preserves, I would also add it to this negative space, just because these are very light and they just look, actually we might leave them in, they kind of look cute. And there you have it. Cute little monochromatic bouquet that matches our little swatch. This next bouquet is our tropical collection, and the color theory we will focus on is Analogous, specifically the color of the year, which is peach fuzz. And we're going to create a tropical citrus look that is modern and abstract. So this one is going to be a little bit more difficult to start with, as we don't have too much greenery, but I am going to be using preserved ruscus to create that chicken wire effect that I talked about in our first bouquet. So I'll do that really quickly here. I always start with the biggest and most sturdiest tropical piece because it's very hard to add it later, and it's kind of my focal, so it helps me build around it. Add some tropical leaves. Once we have our ruscus, the greenery, and the main tropical piece in, I then add stock, as it's fuller, and it helps kind of cover the negative space in the middle, which also helps that for that chicken wire effect. So I'm kind of sticking it in between, so that way it'll be easier to put in all the flowers later. The stock sometimes has a little gestural stem to it too. So you want to adjust it according to the shape you're creating. So since this one is bending this way, I'm going to pull it out more. this way, and since this way is forward, I'm gonna do that, and this way to the left. So kind of creates that fan look. Next up, I'm gonna again do my standard flowers because they are not my focal and I'm still trying to cover a lot of the base. And again, you wanna put that mom in the middle just like I did for the white one. Adjust here. In this style of bouquet, you do have to adjust the greenery a lot because there's not really a chicken wire effect yet as we're still building it. But once we get through the mums, it should be more sturdy. Just like that. Then we're gonna add some carnations. I'm just using 2 this time. Usually I do groups of 3. But because tropical flowers have thicker stems, I don't like to add too many standard flowers to it, as my hand will not like that. And as you can see, the base is very full, which means now I can add all the pops of flowers. We have some fun pasta, gerberas, a peony, some standard roses, and garden roses. Just like before, we're gonna do the standard roses first. And I kind of want one in the middle. And then probably one off to the side. To still keep that shape going. I'm gonna save the peony for last. We'll do the gerberas. I do like to group with gerberas because it just makes them more fun. And it also adds to the architectural build. Since this one is an abstract modern bouquet, you really want those fun gestural stems just popping out of the base that you build. Up next, I'm gonna do the garden roses. I just have 2 this time. And I want this one here. I want it to pop out from in between the standard roses and the carnations. So that way it's more focal. Same with this one, and all of these keep moving because, yeah, there you go. And I'm gonna add my longer stems. Some negative space here. And you can either group the anthurium or you can add them to opposite sides. If I wanted to create this look, or if I wanted to create more of this look. So it just depends on your preference, but actually, I'm gonna put it here. Change my mind. Because of the shape of all these flowers, it actually adds to the architectural aspect of the bouquet, making it more abstract, as each flower already has a funky shape. So that actually is a benefit to me. Next, I'm gonna do my peonies. And they are my most focal. So I'll add it here. And I probably want to add another one. I like to add focals to the same side, but not grouped. So one lower, usually in the center, and one higher. Like that, again, to keep it abstract. And then for the ranunculus, since they usually come in pretty short, I like to do the grouping again, and I just place them down, just like that. And you have your peach fuzz, abstract, analogous bouquet. For our last bouquet, we are going to be doing our designer's choice, focusing on the seasonal collection. Since Valentine's is right around the corner, I'm going to be making a Valentine's Day arrangement, and the color theory we're focusing on is an accent color. So in the midst of the neutral blush, we're gonna have pops of red. In this bouquet though, we're going to start with hydrangea instead of greenery. And you'll see me struggle a little bit because hydrangea tends to move due to its heavy head. But when you start with the hydrangea, you want to kind of build the shape that you're going for, just as I mentioned in the first two bouquets. But with the hydrangea, I only use 2 stems. If it's a bigger arrangement, you can use 4 or 5. That actually helps you more because the flowers will be popping out of the hydrangea. So for the architectural theme we're going here, it's called a firework. So we're creating this base, and then out of this base will come the fireworks of the flowers or the pops of color. So you start with the hydrangea first, and then I'm going to do the spray roses in between the hydrangea. I put the spray roses in between because it helps kind of hold the hydrangeas in place, but you still have to adjust. So I always like having one hydrangea higher than the other, but you don't have to do that. It just helps with the shape. I'm gonna do the moms, again, in the center. Also to cover that area in between the hydrangeas, I'm gonna add these tropical additions here because I want a pop of red on the bottom. I'm gonna squeeze one of the hydrangea branches in between that, so then it helps hold them in place. And then I'm gonna do on the opposite side, the preserved. So you can kind of see how it's starting to form as a firework. And I always group. If it's just 2 colors, with 2 elements. So I use the 2 spray roses, 2 moms, 2 hydrangeas. Up next, we're going to do our standard roses, which are red. And I'm gonna add the red throughout the arrangement and making them really tall, again, for that firework effect. Fun part about hydrangeas, you can just stick the flowers through it. Again, I don't like when the flowers are the same height, so you want to play with the position of the flowers, adjusting it as you go. And my last one, probably went here. Next up, I want to add more red, and our focal is our red anthurium. But before I do that, I do want to add more fireworks here. And again, pulling this forward. Basically with the hydrangea method, you really have to tug and pull a lot because it does keep sinking down. And I'm gonna add more of the spray roses because they're red. As the rest of my recipe is more blush, I wanna add the red first. So wherever I'm kind of missing pops of red, stick that through. I'm gonna do my garden roses. Really making them the focal, so just barely above all the other flowers, unless I want to hide it and make the red pop. So you can see how they're at different dimensions or heights. I'm really spreading out the garden roses because there are only 2 colors in this bouquet. You want to draw the recipient to kind of move through the arrangement and really focus on each flower individually, which is why I'm using that spread out method, which is also the firework method. So you can kind of see how it's a firework because all of these things are popping out of the hydrangea, which you can still adjust. I saved the anthurium for last because I do want it to be more focal, and I haven't decided if I wanted it here or popping out of the hydrangea. So I'm going to do the ranunculus first. And the ranunculus already has that fun effect to it, and it has the gestural stems. Instead of grouping as I did for the other arrangements, I actually spread this one out as well. To add that fun firework look again. Just sticking it in between. I created a pretty good chicken wire here. All right, this one I want pretty high. So once I'm done with all of my ranunculus, then I add in my anthurium. And the reason I'm putting it on this side is because we already have a lot of weight here. We want to add a pop on the other side. And adjust on the flowers to make sure they're not the same heights. There you have a little Valentine's firework bundle. Also matching our color swatch. So I would really recommend creating seasonal pieces that are available at your store, whether it's Valentine's Day, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, or maybe it's an actual season like spring, summer, fall, winter. Really focus on the blooms that grow during that season and highlight the colors that are highlighted that season. So in this case, it's Valentine's Day, but if it were fall, I would do more orange, brown hues. If it was Christmas, I would use more pine, red amaryllis, and etc. So I do recommend doing seasonal collections because that actually helps your customers spend more money at your flower shop.